am pushing the record button now. Don Armstrong, pleasure to be here with you today. I'd like to introduce everybody to Don Armstrong, the former chairman of the board for North Texas Leukemia and Lymphoma Society. Did I say that correctly, Don?
Got it. Absolutely right. Thank you.
Most importantly, Don is a former cancer survivor, and it's been 15 years since he was diagnosed. Is that correct?
Correct. Yeah.
And is cancer-free today. And so, welcome, Don. I just wanted to let everybody know what we're doing here. We're going to be brief. As you know, when I called you yesterday, I let you know that I am a Man of the Year candidate for the Leukemia and Lymphoma Society here in Fort Worth. And we're in the final days of the 10-week competition. So I wanted to reach out to a couple of friends of LLS. Obviously, you're more than just a friend. Again, you're a cancer survivor. You've been very involved with the organization. Wanted to hear your story, your perspective. And while I directly do not have a story to share, what influenced me to participate in Man of the Year was knowing that I'm a father, I have 2 children, and if my children were ever diagnosed with a blood cancer like leukemia or something similar, I would love to know that somebody was out there advocating for my family. So it really pulled hard at my heartstrings, and made the decision to participate. And I thank you for being willing to share your story with us.
Absolutely. And let me start by saying thank you, Mike, for taking this step, maybe for getting a little bit out of the box in terms of jumping into something that may not have a direct connection for you, but has so many connections for so many people. And what you're doing is going to lead to so many exciting things for other people, just like me, who had been diagnosed 15 years ago. So thank you for doing that. That's a big deal.
Yes, sir.
So my story, I was diagnosed in September of 2005. And like a lot of people that are diagnosed with any of the leukemias or any of the blood cancers, really, I had absolutely no clue. I was very active. I was a runner. I was in the gym. I played golf. I traveled. I'm a golf course consultant. And so I was traveling all over the world, working with owners and managers of golf courses. And so I didn't really have any thought that something might be wrong with me. You know, I had some signs and symptoms, but they really didn't mean anything to me until after I was diagnosed. So I could look back and say, oh, that's what that was. I was meeting with a couple of clients of mine on a Friday afternoon, and I had been with them all week. I'd been with them since Monday and had been at their facilities talking to them and their employees. And they took the time on that Friday afternoon to sit me down individually so that they could each tell me that I looked horrible. True story. They sat me down, and I was actually on my way out the door, and the executive director grabbed me by the arm and pulled me in her office and said, "Sit down, I need to talk to you." And I said, "Okay." And she said, you don't look very good. You look horrible in fact.
Wow.
And so she said, "I'm not sure what's going on. Do you have anything going on?" I said, "No, not really." I showed her this rash on my legs, and she said, "That's not a rash. That's called petechiae. That's the red blood cells trying to bleed out of your body. That's not good." So that got my attention. So I'm leaving after talking to her for about 5 minutes, and the lady next to her, in her office next to her, grabs me, pulls me in her office, sits me down to tell me I look horrible. That's how my journey started with leukemia. They both were sincere enough and were in the healthcare industry that I thought, well, maybe I should go against the typical guy norm and go see my doctor. So I went and saw my doctor the following Monday, and he showed a lot of concern for me. He did some blood work and some other things, but the blood work was the most important thing. He called me the next morning. He called me, not a nurse, not one of the other people in the office. He called me to tell me that they got my blood work back and it wasn't good. He said, "In fact, I think that you might have leukemia." This guy had been my doctor for 20 plus years. I remember telling him hey, shut up, Dr. Johnson. I don't have leukemia. And he says, "No, I think you might. I got an appointment for you to go see an oncologist. You need to go right now." And so I did that, spent 3 minutes with the oncologist. He directed me over to Harris Southwest, they have a triage area in their emergency room. And they were trying to prep me for a bone marrow biopsy aspiration. I didn't know what that was. I didn't know what they were trying to prep me for, but 14 hours later, I had that test. The next day, I'm back with the oncologist diagnosed with acute myeloid leukemia. So I was one of those guys that never thought I'd hear the words, "you have cancer." But Friday afternoon, September the 9th, I have these two ladies who I now call my guardian angels who said, "Hey, you don't look very good." The next Monday, I go see my GP. The next Tuesday, I'm having that test done. On Wednesday, I'm told I have leukemia. And on Thursday, I'm in Harris Southwest and Harris downtown Fort Worth with a PICC line in my arm and chemo going through my body by noon of that day.
Wow.
So
Wow.
it was quite a rush to from being healthy to being diagnosed with a disease that could take my life. And what was really interesting is that I couldn't understand why there was so much attention around me, why everybody was buzzing around and doing this and that, and there were a lot of tests. And one of the nurses grabbed me by the hand. She says, "You understand that you have a 25 to 30% chance of surviving this type of cancer, don't you?" I went, I do now. Thank you.
Wow.
Yeah. So it was definitely an eye opener.
Pardon my ignorance, but were they able to tell you the severity of leukemia? Are there different stages of leukemia, as we know with other forms of cancer, where they say it's 1 or 3 or whatever?
Great question. 15 years ago, they didn't do much in terms of differentiating. I mean, I had acute myeloid leukemia, and if you have any of the acutes, it's not good. And so they now put a classification on it. When I was diagnosed, there was no classification. As soon as you're diagnosed, you go to the hospital, you start chemo right away. I started chemo that Thursday, and I was on chemo 24 hours a day for the next 7 days while they were trying to get rid of all the leukemia in my body. And unfortunately, there's a lot of side effects to that. But I was on that regime for 7 days, spent 33 days in the hospital. Wow. While they were taking basically they nuke your system. It takes your bone marrow system, the ability to produce any blood products, down to zero. And then they hopefully when you come out of that, you no longer have any leukemia blasts in your body, which was the case for me. So they do now rank them, but back in that time frame, it doesn't seem like maybe that long, but 15 years, a lot has happened in the cancer world.
Don, can you just tell us what it's like? Obviously, you talked about going through life, living a healthy lifestyle, always telling yourself that's not going to be me. That wouldn't happen to me. And then it did happen. What was the mindset when you're in the hospital for 7 days or a month? How do you get through that mentally?
It was a shock to the system. It was something that it wasn't anywhere on my short, medium, long-term plan, to have cancer. But I knew I felt like I was in good hands with a great doctor and great nurses, and I have a very strong faith, and so I knew God was on my side. So although I wasn't thrilled to have leukemia, I felt like I was in the right place, and that I would just go through the steps. Let's get going. I was always, let's go. If I got to do chemo, let's make chemo happen. So, I was always thinking and looking forward. The journey didn't end after that 33 days. I mean, they give you that first round of chemo, and they hope that they take care of all the leukemia in your body. But in my case, they felt like a stem cell transplant would be in my best interest long term. So they basically nuke your bone marrow, and then they replace that with a new bone marrow system. So they sent me to Dallas over to Salmon's Cancer Research Center in Dallas, where I spent another 30 days in the hospital because they gave me another round of chemo, and we started the process trying to find a donor. It took 8 months to find a donor. So you can imagine, I had a lot of ups and downs during that 8-month period. It typically takes, I say typically, it's usually 30 to 60, maybe 90 days to find a donor. And it took a little bit longer for me. My doctor at Baylor, Dr. Fay, told me I had a quirk in one of my chromosomes that made finding a donor pretty tough. I quickly told him that I had a lot of quirks, but we would go with that one as the most important one during that particular moment. So it took 8 months, finally found a donor, and then that's when I had my transplant day, the 12th of 2006. So I just celebrated my 14th stem cell transplant birthday just back in May, and that's a big deal. Yeah, thank you.
Bravo. That's wonderful. Praise God.
Yeah, absolutely.
So fast forward to the day that they tell you, hey, this is working, and looks like you're gonna pull through, Don.
Yeah, that's kind of an extrapolated deal too, because they give you the stem cell transplant. There's some potential negatives to having a stem cell transplant, so it's just a matter of, in terms of percentages for your long-term survival. All I heard was stem cell transplant could help me long-term, so I went with that. I had what's called GVHD, host versus graft disease resistance, where the stem cells that were put into your body reject your body. And so there's certain things that you have. In my case, it affected my eyes, and it affected my mouth, my throat. So it was kind of a tough period, but I managed to get through that period. I felt like after I had the transplant that I considered myself a survivor. And again, I was ready to move forward. Being as active as I was prior to being diagnosed, the day after my transplant, I started asking my doctor when I could start working out again, because I hadn't really been able to work out. And he told me, I'll let you know, just not now, just hang on. So September the 12th, all these dates are ingrained in my mind. September the 12th of 2006, he finally told me that I could work out again. And I'm pretty convinced he told me because he was tired of me asking him, but that's okay. I didn't care. I wanted to do something to show that I was on the right track, that I was improving. And so I decided to start running again. I did a little bit in the gym, but not as much. So I started doing some running. Asked myself, after doing the turkey trot, in Thanksgiving of 2006, in the middle of the turkey trot, I actually had to ask I'm having a dialogue with myself where I said, hey, you think you could run a marathon? Where that came from, Mike, I had no idea. But my answer was yes. So I started training for a marathon, ended up running the Cowtown Marathon in February of 2007. This is where the Leukemia Lymphoma Society, this is where the Leukemia Lymphoma Society comes in. I really didn't know who they were. I didn't know who the Leukemia Lymphoma Society was. I heard about the Leukemia Lymphoma Society, but didn't really know what they did. After that first marathon, February 2007, I was looking for a way to give back, just like you're doing, Mike. Just being a Man of the Year candidate, trying to raise money to help other people. That's what I wanted to do. I wanted to find a way that I could raise money and help an organization in terms of research, so that somebody didn't have to go through what I went through. And I thought, well, let's see what's out there. And I found Team in Training, which is one of the campaigns with the Leukemia Lymphoma Society, along with the Man and Woman of the Year and Like the Night. And pretty much signed up immediately for a marathon with Team in Training, which was the Rock and Roll Marathon in San Diego, June of 2007, 3 months after my first marathon.
I've been there.
Yeah. It was.
I didn't run that race, but my wife did, the Rock and Roll in San Diego, and it was the half. So
yeah,
great connection there.
Yeah, it was an amazing experience for me. I was absolutely blown away by all the Team in Training people and all the money that was raised, by the organization. And so that's when I said, okay, this is what I want to do. I want to keep doing this. So I actually signed up for another marathon in October with Team in Training that same year. And then I just last fall did my 26th Team in Training event, which was a hike in Moab, Utah. So I've run 22 marathons. I've done 2 triathlons, 100-mile cycle ride, and then this hike in Utah. But it was all about raising money for the Leukemia Lymphoma Society. It was all about being an advocate for the organization, because I knew I knew what that organization had done. I knew what the Leukemia Lymphoma Society had done in terms of putting dollars towards research. And research has been so effective. I mean, over $1 billion has been put into research. And let me emphasize and say that again. $1 billion has gone into research, not raised. That's how much money they have put into research. It's actually about 1.3 billion now. But that is for people like myself, or the people that you're going to meet, the child of the year that you're going to meet here soon. I mean, that's so that those experiences can be minimized, so we don't have to have people go through what I went through. The mission of the Leukemia Lymphoma Society is to find a cure for blood cancer, leukemia, lymphoma, myeloma, and to support patients and their families. That's the two missions. But the most important thing about that is to find a cure for blood cancer. That's what their whole driving mission is. And they're making so much incredible progress. Weekly, monthly, yearly. It's incredible what's happened in the 15 years since I was diagnosed. We've had so much great improvements. I mean, back in the mid 60s, if a child was diagnosed with ALL, acute lymphocytic leukemia, they had about a 6.5% chance of living. It's now, Mike, over 90%. But it's because of the dollars. It's because of the dollars like people like you have raised that made the difference. So that's why I'm more than a little bit passionate about the organization.
Yeah. Fantastic. Beautifully said. Well, I think I have two final questions for you, Don. We're in the middle of COVID-19 still. Here we are in mid-June, and it's still plaguing us. What would it be like to have leukemia with the current climate that we're in right now? Does that affect anything?
Yeah, it would add another complication to the process, because when you have leukemia or any of the blood cancers, you're really immunocompromised. And so that's one of the big factors that affect the rate of occurrence of COVID-19. So it would make it quite a challenge. You end up isolating yourself a lot anyway when you're going through the treatment and the recovery. So that's something that would be the norm, but it certainly would cause a patient or a person going through it to be even more cautious about the circumstances that they put themselves in. After the transplant, I was not supposed to be in large groups. I was supposed to have a mask on. Imagine that. I was supposed to wear a mask, and I was supposed to pretty much isolate myself to stay away from others because of the secondary issues that it could affect my body.
And that's the reason that we're on this Zoom call today, because you're doing all you can to protect yourself and stay healthy. Is that right?
Yep, that's right. I just have an acute sensitivity to anything that might be related to immunocompromise. I mean, I don't have any of those conditions, but I'm just very aware of it. I've had some friends that have gone through the challenges of COVID-19, and I just wanted to make sure I was doing the right thing, the things that I think medical science are telling me I should do.
Definitely. So just to kind of drive the point home, most patients with a blood cancer have to stay in isolation, or a better word would be in quarantine.
Sure.
Anyways, and I've been saying, as terrible as COVID has been on our economy, on the world, death toll is incredibly high. We're going to get past it. It's temporary, but blood cancers are here. They've been here for a long time. We're working towards a cure, and so that's why this mission is so important to me. So, in parting, Don, would you just tell us a little bit about the backdrop behind you?
Yeah, I had become very involved with the Leukemia Lymphoma Society. Beyond just doing team and training events, I got involved with doing a number of other campaigns, the Light the Night, and then I was asked to be on the board of trustees, which I thought was a terrific opportunity for me. And along the way, I did a lot of speaking, and through the speaking, I was told, man, it'd be great. You should write a book. You've got a story to tell. And so a couple of years ago, actually 3 years ago, I ended up finishing my book called Finish Your Race, which is pretty much my story with leukemia and the impact that it had on my life, the way that it changed my life. And so behind me in the backdrop, so that you can't see the rest of my house, it's the backdrop in the front. It's actually the front of my book. Oops.
Sold anywhere books are sold, I imagine.
Yes, yeah. Actually, you can get it on Amazon, or you can actually get it on my website, which is donarmstronglive.com. And this is not a plug for that, but yeah, you can get it on my website. And actually, 10% of the proceeds from my book do go to the Leukemia Lymphoma Society.
Gotcha.
So thank you for asking.
Of course, Don, it's been a pleasure. Thank you so much for opening up and sharing your story. Thank you for all the work that you've done for LLS, and that you will continue to do. It's greatly appreciated, and we're thrilled that you're cancer free, and we pray that it stays that way. And thank you again for your support on my campaign for Man of the Year 2020.
Absolutely. And thank you for asking me to share my story. And thank you again for taking this step, to this challenge of raising money for the Leukemia Lymphoma Society. I'm sure that you're going to do great. And I will see you next Friday, by the way, at the grand finale.
The grand finale, virtual. It'll be a big party.
I will be emceeing the grand finale.
Wonderful. Well, I'm grateful to all of our viewers that watch this. Please do consider donating to LLS and Man of the Year campaign. I'll provide the link in this post. Thank you. Thanks again, Don.
Absolutely. Thank you. Bye.